Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies, a program that's kind of about things that are out there on the edge of society. Although I think we're making some of these topics more uh, mainstream all the time. So I'm Dan Hall, one of your hosts, and we actually have a new guest host today, somebody that I've known for a long time, but haven't had the chance to work with, and that's Angela Hock. Angela, welcome to Anomalies, and thanks for being on here with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Dan. I'm really looking forward to it.
Sure, you may get stuck with an extra job here. So our guest today is somebody I've known a little bit about for a while, and that's John Russell. John's coming to us from Florida. John describes himself, I believe, as well, maybe I ought to let him describe himself instead of having me do that. John, welcome to our show, and tell us who John Russell is.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate the invite. Angela, it's nice to meet you. I am a professional psychic. I'm internationally known. I've read for clients in over 40 countries. I've got clients all around the world. I'm a paranormal researcher and investigator, and also a published author.
Plug something in there.
I read John, that you started becoming psychic as a child at the age of 5, and that you saw your first ghost then.
I did, yeah. I was sound asleep in my bedroom, and for no apparent reason, I woke up in the middle of the night, absolutely, totally wide awake. No grogginess, no sleepiness, just suddenly wide awake. And I thought, well, it was really odd, really strange. And I thought, well, maybe a noise outside woke me up. So I lay there real still and I listened, didn't hear anything. And my parents had left a nightlight on in the bathroom for me down the way, so I could see to get up. If I got up at night and go to the bathroom, I could walk down the hallway and go to the bathroom. So I raised up on my elbows in bed just to kind of look around my bedroom. And as I looked out my bedroom door, which was open, looked down the hallway, there was this elderly Black gentleman staring around the doorway down the hallway looking at me. And I screamed bloody murder because we didn't have anyone Black living with us. We're a white family. My presumption as a 5-year-old child was someone's broken in the house. And when I screamed, he walked around the doorway into the hall, started walking down the hall toward me, toward my bedroom, eyes locked on mine. And he was every single bit as solid as you or I. He wasn't translucent. He wasn't transparent or misty. He was totally, completely solid, just as if you or Dan had walked in the room. And I screamed bloody murder again, and my parents began to come running, and he began to disappear. He became then translucent, transparent, and then vanished by the time my parents got there. And my mother held me and tried to console me. I was sobbing and wailing and telling them there's somebody in the house. And they tried to tell me, no, you just had a bad nightmare. And I was like, no, I have seen somebody in the house, solid as a rock, as solid as you or I, that vanished. And so my dad was so convinced that I had seen someone in the house that he actually went around, looked in all the closets, under the beds, checked the doors and windows. Of course, everything was locked up tight. And then they had the task of trying to get me to go back to sleep, because I'm still terrified. Where'd this guy come from? How did he, being solid, disappear into thin air? Is he going to come back? Why did he come in the first place? Is he going to ask me to do something that I'm going to consider scary or whatever? So I finally made it back to sleep, but for the next several days, several weeks, I kind of spent looking over my shoulder all the time. It's like, when's this guy coming back again? And paranormal phenomena began to happen to me on the physical realm, not in a meditative state or a daydream state, or not in my dreams, or not in a vision, but on the physical realm, in physical reality. Things were affected and moved and transformed and changed and so on and so forth. And other people saw that. And as that began to happen to me, I had this epiphany. It was like, that guy came to open up the portal to these experiences. Now, at the time, I didn't understand why, but shortly after, I began to understand that my connection with the other side, was going to be beneficial and helpful to me. And then in turn, it would enable me to be of help to others down the road. And that was the opening to the paranormal experiences. Now, the psychic part of it started between 5 and 6 then, maybe closer to 6. And that was after this had happened and all these paranormal experiences began to happen to me on the physical realm. And I was out in the backyard playing one day and had a toy I was messing around with playing. And this car pulled into the driveway and I didn't recognize the people. So I ran inside, got my mom and dad, and I said, this car's coming in the driveway. I don't know who these people are. And so they came outside and I said, oh, those are friends of ours. And I had never met the people. So the people parked the car, got out, and we're standing out on the sidewalk talking with my mom and dad. I was goofing around with my toy. And all of a sudden I had this vision, this crystal clear vision. And I just walked over to the group of adults and I said, you folks just went on vacation. And I said, you took that car that's in the driveway, you drove that car, and you took 2 kids with you. They're not with you today, but you have 2 kids, and you took them with you on this vacation. And you stayed at this hotel that was this many stories and painted this color. And there were these trees out front at regular intervals that looked like this. And the pool area was painted this color and looked like this, had these chairs around it. And the woman's husband was kind of looking back and forth between his wife and my parents and me with this bemused kind of smile on his face, like, what in the world's going on? And his wife, I'll never forget, she was slack-jawed and literally bug-eyed and looking at me like I had cobras growing out my ears. And she looked at my parents and she said, how the hell could he possibly know that?
Yeah.
And my parents were kind of taken aback, and my mother mumbled something like, well, you know, kids and their imaginations. And she said, no, that doesn't account for any of this. How the hell could he possibly know that? And my parents were at a loss for words. And she said, that's what we came to tell you, was about the vacation that we just took. And we drove our car with our 2 kids, stayed in a hotel that looked exactly like John described. How the hell is it possible that he could know that? And of course, my parents were at a loss and they said, John, hush and go play. And I said, okay, nice to meet you folks. And off I went, and I scared the life out of them because I never came back to visit my parents again. But that's when I discovered that I could see into people's lives. Then I learned that I could predict their futures. I could tell where they had been. I could tell what they were thinking. I could tell what was going on in their lives, what their emotions were. And all of that came together and meshed then with the paranormal experiences. And that started me on this path that now I've been a professional psychic for over 50 years.
So were you able to control that? Like, or that was just a spontaneous thing that these people drive up and you have this vision of where they've been? It pops into your head like you know it to be something true.
Initially it was a spontaneous thing. And as I got older and began to study it and began to study everything that I could and begin to see if I could practice it and control it and manipulate it and get better with it, then it became something that I could control, that I could exercise at will, because that channel was always open to the other side. And that information was always readily available and always flowing to me. But that was a process that I learned as I studied and I grew.
So,
Oh, go ahead, Angie.
no, go ahead.
Okay. So did you ever figure out who the black guy was?
I never did. The best that I can figure out was he was a spirit guide or a guardian angel that was tasked with coming and opening all this up and awakening these gifts in me. And I've never seen him since. And coincidentally, I have never been frightened or scared by any of the paranormal experiences I've had since. And I've had well over 1,000 of them. And again, these are things that occur on the physical realm. A lot of times we get them on film, video, audio, other people witness them. But I have never again been frightened, but I've never seen him again. I kind of feel like he might be out there on the periphery, keeping an eye on me, saying, okay, let's make sure this guy's doing his job right. But never seen him again, though. I wish I had.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you have that impression. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I think it's interesting that you have that impression, though, even with your psychic gifts, it was never really made clear to you what role he had, or if he was just somebody who happened to live in that house before you guys bought it and.
Could have been, I don't know, and I've never been able to discern that. And for me, it's not frustrating. It's like, okay, just a matter of fact thing. That's the way it happened. And that's the way that my gifts were activated. And so, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one thing that's kind of going through my mind is how kids who have experiences like you and who talk about those experiences get treated. So
Yeah.
obviously your parents on some level probably accepted that because they accepted you, but did you tell other people that you had these experiences, and what kind of response did you get from them?
Yeah, initially I did. And Daniel, you're right. Usually kids that express these things are told to shut up, to hush up, they're punished. You don't have an imaginary friend. Things don't disappear into thin air. You can't affect things. Doors don't open and close by themselves. So, kids are told to shut up and not to, engage in such beliefs or behavior for the most part. I was very fortunate in that on my mother's side of the family, there were some people that had had psychic experiences. They believed in the paranormal realm. They experienced a little bit of the paranormal realm and they studied it. And nobody experienced anything as dramatic or with as much frequency, with as much volume as I did. So why that came to me, I don't know. But my mother was very encouraging and answered all the questions that she could. My father was scared to death of the paranormal because he was an old stock farmer, and he was tough as nails, and he owned a bar, and he kept a blackjack behind the bar and used it if things got rowdy. So he was just tough as nails. But the paranormal, he couldn't fight. He couldn't lay his hands on it. He couldn't control it. It controlled him. And for the most part, if it manifested, it did things around us that were audible but invisible. And that just freaked him out because there was no way to confront it, no way to control it. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that we had happen was when I was, again, a kid after all this had started, I was outside playing one day, and my parents had poured concrete sidewalks all around the house. And my dad wore goat roper boots for the most part, even after he sold the ranch and everything, the farm. And my mother wore high heels a lot. So if they were out walking on that sidewalk, you'd hear them really loudly. And I was out there playing around the corner of the house, and here I hear my mother's high heels come clicking on the sidewalk. So I go and I hide right by the corner of the house, and I'm like, okay, when she gets really close, I'm going to jump out and scare the life out of her, kids. And so I waited until the footsteps were right by the corner of the house. They're like super loud. And I jumped out to yell, and not a soul in the flesh is there. And I was like, holy cow. So that's when some of these things begin to manifest. Now, we would be outside, all of us working in the yard. Well, I'd be messing around playing with toys more than working, but my parents would be doing yard work together. And those footsteps would start up on the sidewalks, and my father would hear them. And he would throw down his implement, his hoe or his rake or whatever he had, and go around the house and go in the house looking for the source of these footsteps that he heard. And my mother and I would laugh, and we'd tell him, so, you heard the footsteps, Dad? And he's like, oh, hush, I don't want to talk about it. That was his response. It's like, you don't talk about it. So it frightened him. And also he was raised in a very strict, devout Christian environment. And as you all probably know, you don't discuss that in the church, you get castigated. If it's paranormally approved by the church or it's in the Bible, then it's okay. But if it falls outside of that venue, then it's got to be evil or demonic or dangerous or satanic or whatever. So he knew that he'd bring the wrath of the church down upon him if he talked about it. And then he was scared of it. So he was not much encouragement, but he would witness these things continually with me around and with all of us there together. So by virtue of being encouraged instead of discouraged, by the time I was 12, I was reading and studying everything I could find on the planet about religion, psychology, parapsychology, the psychic realm, paranormal, supernatural realm, psychics, mediums. You have everything I could find, I've read. And I did that for several reasons. One thing was I wanted to find out what worked and what didn't, what was real and what wasn't, and how could I enhance my gift and make it better? How could I grow in this and get better with it? And also by the age of 12, I had observed a lot of people in both the religious community, because we were very religious. We were at church all the time. We were in belonged to a mainline Presbyterian church. And I had observed both in the church and in the spiritual community, the psychic paranormal community, that there were a lot of phonies, there were a lot of frauds, there were a lot of con artists, and there were a lot of liars. And I was like, wow, you say this and you claim to practice this, and then you act this way. So I said, okay, that's wrong. And I always have the strong conscience, the strong sense of conscience about me. And I was like, okay, that's wrong. So I've got to investigate this and figure out why these people could be a minister and run off with the choir director's wife, or why they could be and that literally happened.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah, or why they could be claiming to believe in the spiritual realm and working for the good of mankind and ripping people off while they're doing it. So that set me on this journey of investigating people as well as paranormal events. And that's something that continues to this day.
So you're a psychic detective.
Yeah, yeah, basically,
look into
yeah.
people's backgrounds as a detective and use your psychic abilities to discern what they're doing.
Yeah. And unfortunately found a lot of phonies and a lot of frauds out there over the years, still do.
Oh.
And I've had to rescue a lot of my clients that have fallen prey to a lot of these phony psychics, and they've paid them thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And you think, well, idiots, they get what they deserve if they're that stupid. Well, the problem is a lot of these people, one example I can give without giving anything away, the person away, was a person that had 3 college degrees, owned their own business, and had a genius IQ, and was into one of these phonies for over $50,000. And I had talked to someone here the other day I had to rescue that was into somebody for about $10,000 or more. And the reason that people fall for this, they're called con artists, confidence artists,
Yeah.
because they know exactly how to gain your confidence.
Exactly.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
can
that's
look at
what they
Daniel,
do.
they can look at Angela, they can look at me and figure out immediately what makes each of us tick
Yeah.
and which buttons to push to go there.
Right.
And I watched a special with my wife one night. It was when we were still living in New York, and it was one of the magazine shows, the TV magazine shows, like 48 Hours or one of those, whatever it was. And they had the New York Attorney General on there. And he was saying that a lot of these phony psychics in New York will make $250,000 or more a year as an average. And they, the question was, well, why don't you crack down on these people? And he said, well, the first place, most of these people have never used their real names at all. So we have no idea who they are. They move around constantly. And then if we do happen to find someone and find out who they really are and get people willing to testify, about that time a serial killer case comes across my desk and your phony psychic goes on the back burner. So it's very, very hard to prosecute those people, to keep track of them, and so on and so forth. So it's a field, the religious field is full of phonies. You've got Jim Baker and you've got, Oral Roberts and all of these clowns. And then the psychic realm is also full of a lot of phonies and con artists. And so it's a really tragic thing, because, my position in doing all of this is to bring to people the fact that this realm is real, that it does exist, that it can impact us in positive ways on the physical realm, in the physical realm. And it can be very helpful to us, and it can enable us to help others. And then you've got all these idiots and goofballs out here doing all this to sour it for people that have legitimate gift and have legitimate experiences. and are trying to make things happen for the good. And, you know, people that might otherwise be interested or want to learn more, they encounter one of these phonies or those frauds and they lump everybody together. Or it makes them so gun shy that they don't want to go forward. They don't know how to go forward. What do I look for? How do I tell the real from the false? And so on and so forth. So that's always been a big issue for me. And still go after these people as hard as I can, go after all these phonies to expose them as frequently as I can, and will do so till my dying day.
Wow.
Well,
Are there
that's
any,
so go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, Angie.
Are
Go
there
ahead.
any notable psychics right now that are out there that are on TV that we all have heard of that you think are not real psychics?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
really? That are making quite a bit of money.
That are
doing this
making
stuff?
quite a bit of money. One of the most famous ones, who is now crossed over, was quite wealthy and had a criminal history, had a criminal background. Most people didn't know that. But and oddly enough, one of the people that a lot of people go after, John Edward, he has a legitimate gift. My wife and I have been to one or two of his presentations, and he absolutely has a legitimate gift. The beef that I have with him is on his website. He got off into the little blessed prayer pins and the blessed, you know, this, that, and the other, that you could buy all these little blessed tchotchkes. And that really just drives me absolutely nuts.
Oh, really?
And then he also, at one point, he made the statement that I would never charge anyone more for a reading than what I would be willing to pay. And then when Sylvia Brown died, she charged like $850. And when she died, he bumped up to $850. And that just flew up my nose. It was like, what are you doing? You know, what the heck are you doing here? And talking about Sylvia Brown, I got a lot of Sylvia Brown's clients, and they would tell me things about her, and I said, you know, God, for $850 an hour, I should get the lottery numbers and maybe something else, you know. And they said, this one lady, she said, oh, honey, it's not $850 an hour. I said, yeah. I said, I've seen it on her website. It's $850. She said, honey, you don't understand. It's not $850 an hour. It's $850 a reading. And that 800, that reading may be 10 minutes. And then you're out of there. I was like, holy God, unreal, absolutely unreal. So, you know, there's
John, that brings up the point. How does one practice caveat emptor, buyer beware? How do you differentiate? I mean, obviously you've got a pretty stellar reputation, but how do we know the fakers from the non-fakers?
That's a question I get asked a lot. And there are ways that you can learn and that you can tell the real from the fake. For one thing, look at the amount of money that you're asked for. If the amount for the reading is outrageous, go the other way. The clear tip-off that you're being conned by a phony is that it will always work. No reputable real psychic on this planet is 100% accurate all the time, just does not happen. But these phonies will make it work every single time. And the way they do that, they're exercising magic, sleight of hand magic. So when you go and you pick an egg out of the bowl on the table and they crack it open and this hideous black stuff comes out and goes threading out through the yolk and the white in the bowl and everything, they go, oh my God, look, see, you're cursed. See all this black filth in here, this evil demonic filth. You're cursed, you're cursed. Well, that's sleight of hand magic.
Yeah.
And it'll work as many times as many people come to them because they've learned all these skills. And if you go to a magic website or a magic shop and get the books, you'll find all these tricks in there. And if you don't know how they're done, they look like real magic. They look like something paranormal or supernatural is going on. So it always works. That's one of the things that you can tell. And it's like these stage, the mentalist on stage where they tell you the dollar bill thing that you're holding the serial number and all this and all that. It works every single time, every single performance, everywhere they're at. Well, that's fake. It's not real, it's fake. The legitimate thing doesn't work 100% all the time. Wish to God it did, but it doesn't. So that's another way to tell. The other way is when they start off with, oh, I see darkness around you, evil, curse, sickness, whatever. Run the other way, because that's going to be the precursor to, I can get rid of this for you for $100. And then, oh my God, next time you come back to them, man, I tell you, I've been conversing with the spirits, and you can't believe the darkness and the evil that's around you and the people that are cursing you. And it's going to take a lot more than that to get rid of it. Now, the money's not for me. The money's for the spirits, and I have to buy the spirits, make the spirits a feast.
There you go.
I have to buy them food, and I have to buy them alcohol, and that's going to cost. And then I have to leave this offering of money out on the altar, and that's not for me. I don't get any of it. You can't have it back, but you know, it's for the spirits. They have to keep it, and I don't get none of it, but we got to leave it there. And so that's how all that starts and how that goes. And then you're into thousands, and then you're into 10,000s. And, you know, it's real easy if somebody comes up to you and says, you know, Angela, you seem a little pensive tonight. You seem a little tired. What's going on around you? You know, well, hell, that's all of us all the time. That's life. We're all pensive. We're all tired. We're all worried.
Yeah.
We're all sick. We all got a flat tire. The hot water heater's going out, whatever. So, you know, that's nothing unusual. That's the usual state of life. But by picking up on that, most people don't think about what's going on and what people are saying to them. And that's how they begin to draw you in and suck you in. So that's one of the ways to tell. Another way to tell is if they threaten you, if they tell you, you know, look, unless you let me help you, you're going to get sick, you may die, you're going to be in a horrible accident, someone in your family is going to be harmed. So that's another way to tell.
Yeah, I'd be worried they're going to put a curse on me with those kind of, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes they do threaten to. I think that's kind of rare. That's not the usual modus operandi, but that's kind of the way it goes. So those are some of the ways that you can tell, you know, the real from the phony. And you know, it's like with my clients. You know, I've read professionally for over 50 years now, and as I mentioned, I've got clients, and I've read for clients in over 40 countries around the world. Still have an international clientele today. And I tell my clients, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear in the reading. You may not like the reading. You may not like what's presented to you, because the other side is going to tell me what you need to know. And I'm going to give it to you with no bias, no filter, no, nothing else. It's here's what you need. And you may not like that. And I don't guarantee any success. I don't guarantee I'm going to bring back their departed boyfriend that he's left them. I can bring your boyfriend back. I can heal this. I can guarantee you get a job. I don't do any of that nonsense, because that's all fake and phony. And you know, my clients over the years, the feedback they've given me is that my readings, as far as insights and predictions, are 80 to 90% accurate. Well, that's pretty impressive until you consider, let's take that 90%, let's go high. And that's pretty impressive until you consider that every 9 out of 10 issues, one of those issues I'm going to miss, and it may be a big one. A lot can fall through the crack. So I explain that to my clients and say, look, you know, we're not solving the world's problems here. We're figuring out why you've got to where you're at, what's going on around you now, what's coming in the future, and how to act and react to that, so that you move forward in a better way in your life, and that you avoid as much negativity and problems as you can, and so that you position yourself to interact, attract, and work properly with all the positive things that are coming to get the maximum benefit out of those. And there's a lot of people I've refused to read for. People have paid me money, and I've called them up and said, I just refunded your money. You don't need a reading right now. You need you know, this bit of quick advice, and then down the road, if you need a reading, fine, but you don't need a full reading right now. And my wife tells me I'm the worst businessman on the planet, but you know, it's like, I'm honest, and I sleep good at night, you know,
Right.
because I don't take advantage of people.
So when you're reading for people, is that the same process that you would go through then if you were remote viewing Lincoln's assassin, as I read in your bio?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. It's like, we have all these labels. And for example, trance mediumship is what we used to call it. Now we call it channeling. And 20 years later, it'll be called something else, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And any well-rounded, true psychic has always exercised clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, all these things. And so we separate things, we put labels on them and all this and all that. And I've never done that. I've always said, okay, I'm going to explore as many paranormal and psychic tools and techniques as I can, learn as many as I can, practice and use as many as I can. But, in reading for my clients, the information primarily comes to me in a way of, it's like a direct download. And it's a way of, once you're in school and you learn that 2 + 2 = 4, that's a fact. And you learn that fact, and that fact is with you forever. And then you go to other places in the world, 2 + 2 still equals 4. So that that's something that this universe is built on, that you can rely forever and a day. It's a fact, and it's a fact no matter where you go. Well, when I'm reading for a client, I'm given information. That information comes to me as a certainty, as a knowing that I know just as well as I know 2 + 2 = 4. So then I can relay that information to my client that way. And if it's something I'm uncertain about, I'll tell them I'm uncertain. I'll give them a percentage. But if it's something that the other side has given to me as an exact thing, and it's one of those, I know I can take this to the bank and so can they, then I'll present it to them that way. And it comes across as that fact. Other times with a client, there is some clairvoyance there, some things there, some remote viewing, if you want to call it that. Sometimes I see inside people's homes and tell them how they're decorated and where their furniture's at and what kind of furniture they have and that type of thing. All of these things are never parlor tricks or to impress anyone. The other side will give me what that person needs. And if that person needs that bit of information, then I'll be given that. But it's never for entertainment. It's never to impress. It's never a parlor trick or anything like that. It's always what the client needs. And and I tell people, the reason I read in a two-pronged manner. I tell people, write your list of questions down that you want specific answers to before the reading. And then the other side is going to give me things for you as well. And the reason I let the client ask questions is I've learned over the years that the other side sees a lot further down the road than we do. And they may take into account or value higher certain things than we do. They may hold things more important. So my client may be going, boy, I can't wait for this reading with John. I'm going to ask about my boyfriend. And the other side couldn't care less about the boyfriend. They're like, you need to go back to college and get this degree, So by doing it both ways, I always write down everything that the other side gives me for the client before I start the reading. And then I allow them their questions too. And that way we get the best of both worlds in. And so the other side couldn't care less about the boyfriend, but by allowing them to ask that, I can tap into that energy and then tell them about the boyfriend. But first priority with me is, what does the other side want you to know? What are they going to give to you? What do you need to know? So that's how I approach it.
When you're tapping in, what does that mean exactly? Do you just sit quietly and then you can just, in your mind's eye, you start getting information?
Well, it's always turned on. It never turns off. And so all I have to do is just pay attention to it. It's always there. And I just have to pay attention to it and do what the guys tell me.
So this ending up on the cutting room floor, this History Channel.
Oh man.
About Lincoln's assassin. Well, that's fascinating. What did you find out?
That broke my heart that didn't air.
Yeah.
My passion at the time, there were so many goofy fake paranormal shows on TV, so these so-called paranormal investigators and so-called ghost hunters that are not. And I had this passion to get on the air and to show people what it was really like and what it was really about. And in shooting the pilot, we did that, and we caught paranormal phenomena on camera. And everywhere I went, I did everything in a respectful manner. respected the property, respected the docents there, respected the spirits that were there. And this, honest to God, without bragging, it would have set the bar for paranormal shows forever and a day if it had gone to air. And it just broke my heart that it didn't. But it was a marvelous, marvelous experience. We took the film crew, took me the first episode for the History Channel was going to be on the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And they picked me because they interviewed several psychics and said, well, this guy seems like he has the most common sense and it's not so far out there in the field. And the second reason was I am the poorest student of history on the entire planet. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't remember it. I'm the guy that wrote cheap things on his wrist and hands in school to pass the history test. And so they said, okay, if this guy gets anything, it's got to come from the psychic realm because he doesn't know beans. So we went to DC, and the premise of it was I was going to go all these places where Lincoln was, where the assassination occurred, where John Wilkes Booth fled, and give them my psychic impressions, see what I came up with and everything. So it was the most amazing thing to be able to go into these historical places. And we were given carte blanche because it was one of the biggest media companies in New York, Atlas Media, and that was in conjunction with the History Channel. So with those two combined, we had carte blanche to go anywhere we wanted, do anything we wanted. And when we went to these places, like when we went to Ford's Theater, it was me, the film crew, and the docents that were there that let us in and then got out of the way. No other people were there, no tourists were there, nobody. It was just me and the film crew. And I had carte blanche to wander through all these historic places and give them all my psychic impressions of everything. And it was really amazing because I came up with a lot of things that were immediately verifiable. And what was really interesting was I came up with some things that went against the grain of history that they later researched and found out that I was right and supposed history was wrong. One example of that, under Ford's Theater, there's a museum down there, and it has various artifacts that were ascribed to Lincoln and to the assassination, so on and so forth. So one of the things there is the door that went into the presidential box. And they said that John Wilkes Booth drilled the hole in the door so he could look in and see where Lincoln was seated and what he was doing so he could burst in and shoot him. And I looked at that and I said, no, that's not right. I said, Booth did not drill this hole. Booth had this hole drilled. He didn't do it himself. He had someone in the theater do this that wouldn't arouse suspicion by being there, like a workman, a carpenter, maintenance person, or whatever. But Booth did not drill this hole. And sure enough, we found out with research, they researched, I didn't, but they found out after we shot that and did all that, they did all this heavy, deep research and found out, sure enough, there was a carpenter in the theater that at the owner's direction drilled the hole. It wasn't Booth. And so it was really neat to find out all these things that, and it made believers out of people, because they're like, holy cow, there's no way this guy could have known that. And it was really fascinating. And we got a lot of paranormal phenomena on film. And it was just a wonderful experience. And the other side was very corporative and coming through and manifesting things and giving me information that we could easily and readily verify. So it was a wonderful experience, and unfortunately never made the air. We had the fine cut ready to go. I got to see the fine cut and it was just awesome. And then nope.
Well, you never know. Sometimes they pull those things back out, they reconsider.
Down the road, yeah. This has been a couple of decades now about her. I'm pretty close to. So it's been a while since we did it. So
like John, like the incident with the hole that was drilled by the person that was in the theater, what else did you learn about this historical event that other people might not know, that you found out?
One thing, it was really interesting to me. They kept asking me, was Booth ever sorrowful for his act? And I said, no, he was non-repentant to the end. And sure enough, that was the case, because they found like a diary he kept and other things. And he was very proud of what he had done. He felt he had acted correctly and done the right thing, and he was absolutely not repentant about it at all. And there were some dicey circumstances there with, like, we went to the Samuel Mudd house, which was Dr. Mudd, where Booth had stopped with his broken leg and to get his leg mended. And Booth actually, I think, spent the night there, maybe even a little bit longer. And we got into some problems there because the Mudd family was very adamant that Dr. Mudd had no complicity in this, didn't recognize Booth, didn't know who he was. Well, that to me was ludicrous, just not even from a psychic standpoint, because he and Booth had met twice previously, and he had gone to Booth's hotel room, and they had drank and talked about land and horses and property and stuff. Excuse me. So he had met Booth twice previously. And what I didn't know, which was pretty amazing to me, Booth was the Tom Cruise of his day. He was that famous and that well known. So just about everybody on the planet would have known who Booth was. And he had a distinctive appearance and a handsome guy. And they said he was literally the Tom Cruise of his day. So, you know, just from that standpoint, everybody would have known him. But the fact that Mudd met him twice face to face and even shared drinks with him in his room, and then to say that he didn't know who he was when he showed up. Well, he claimed he was in disguise, but yet when the authorities came to question Mudd, he gave them an exact description of Booth. So there was, you know, just from that standpoint, you don't even have to be psychic not to buy that, but psychically, I just didn't buy into it. And I said, well, you know, my feeling is that he did know Mudd. And I said, I'm not going to say he was complicit, but how did Mudd know, or how did Booth know where to stop, where Mudd's house was, and where to come for treatment if he got into trouble, and so on and so forth. And there were some real interesting things that happened there at the Mudd house. I was in the bedroom where Booth had stayed in his bed while he was convalescing. And I said, I see him sitting here in this bed writing in this diary or journal, which in fact he was doing. And just some odd things, little things about the house. I said, this door used to be over there. And then they moved the door and now it's over here. And I said, yeah, that was correct. They checked with the people of the house and said, yes, that was correct. And so a lot of things like that I saw. And then I think the most dramatic thing, as far as, or at least for me, as far as what we captured on camera, we had a FLIR camera, forward-looking infrared radiation, as well as regular camera. And I believe, and unless somebody can prove me wrong, I believe we were the first to use FLIR in a paranormal investigation. So we had the FLIR, we had the regular camera, and they were filming me with both. And we were upstairs and there was this noise. Everybody heard like this, a big stick or branch snapping. And I said, there's our ghost. So we all go downstairs and I'm standing there and I said, Mrs. Mudd, was that you? And I said, yes. She said, she tells me that it was her, that she has come back, that it's her. And I said, she's over here to my right. And I said, she's walking toward me. And it got ice cold. And I said, she's walking through me right now. And now she's come out the other side. Well, on the FLIR shows heat as white and it shows cold as black. So when I'm announcing that she's walking through me, on the floor by me and walking through me, you can see these black footsteps, which indicate cold. And they're women's shoes in period era soles, period era shoes that you can see walking through me. And we caught that on the FLIR. So that was really, really phenomenal. That was really awesome. So a lot of neat things, but then never made it to air. And Angela, like you say, you know, that's pretty common. There's even famous people, you know, famous actors and actresses have had stuff in the can, maybe 2 or 3 episodes, and then it never airs, never goes. Yeah. But, you know, I couldn't help but wonder if some of the discord with the Mudd family may have been one of the reasons that, you know, maybe somebody called up and said, hey, you can't air this, we're going to sue you or something. I don't know if that's the case, but that and a lot of other things that came to light down the road made me kind of wonder if there wasn't some pressure there.
Really?
Yeah, one of the places that we went to, I was giving my psychic impressions of things there. And the docent that was there was looking at me with this really odd expression, this really odd look on her face. And I thought, I wonder what all this is about. So we had a break in filming, and I just went and grabbed her and I said, hey, can I talk to you? She said, sure. I said, let's go off over here in one of these other rooms where we can talk privately. She said, okay. So we got in there and I said, let me ask you a question. You be totally honest with me. You're not going to hurt my feelings or anything. I said, just be honest. I said, of everything that I've said so far psychically, am I full of BS? Am I on target? Do you agree with it, or what's the deal? She said, oh my God. She said, you're blowing me away. She said, it's freaky. It's incredible. I said, well, you're looking at me with this really weird expression. I can't decipher. Why are you looking at me this way? She said, oh, well, I guess it's a little unsettling. She said, there's a lot of the descendants of these people from history that still live in this area. And if I go on camera and agree with you about these things, some of them which are less than flattering, I'll be out of a job more than likely. So we encountered some of this resistance, some of these problems as we went along. And I don't know that that's the case. I'm speculating, but I couldn't help but wonder if some of these people didn't say, hey, pull the plug on this thing. We don't want this out there, I don't know, who knows, but I'm really sorry that it didn't go to air. It was really phenomenal.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry
that's
too.
a shame.
Yeah. Go ahead, Angie.
No, I was just saying, well, I was kind of going to go down another road, but if you have
Okay.
further questions about this, Dan, go ahead before
Well,
I start.
the only other thing I'm wondering about, and it's kind of about this, is that it seems like John is in the wrong profession. Instead of giving psychic readings to people, he should be used by the government and the Stargate protocols. He should be spying on Putin. He should be doing all this stuff, looking
Yeah.
into all these historical events. Have you thought
Well,
about any of that?
Uri Geller is still doing all of that. He's still very much active in that. So I think they probably have all the resources they need in that regard.
Uri Geller's been quite a controversial character over the years, but you think the real deal?
Uri. Yeah, I've met Uri.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I first, when I was a kid growing up, I read Uri's My Story and saw him on TV and in the papers and all this kind of thing. And I believed he was 100% legitimate then. And as I grew up, I got to New York and had my psychic practice. And at the time, on my website, I didn't even have a photograph of myself. So this is germane to the story. For some reason that I don't even recall, I wrote Uri and we began a correspondence by email. And then that turned into occasional correspondence by snail mail as well. And we discussed very specific psychic issues, psychic things, and so on and so forth, and had quite an extensive conversation about some things. And as things do over the years, you move, you lose touch, whatever, you lose all those emails, you lose the addresses and all this. But before that happened, while we were still in New York, Uri was giving a demonstration in Manhattan. I told my wife, I said, oh my God, we got to go to this, we got to go. So we bought our tickets, which was anonymous. You didn't give your name or anything. You didn't have to reserve tickets in your name. They didn't put the tickets in your name or whatever. And like I said, I didn't have a picture of myself on the website. Uri would have passed me on the street, wouldn't have known me from Adam unless his psychic kicked in. He said, oh, that's the guy I've been riding with. So we go, and my wife asked me, she said, you're really convinced this guy's legitimate? I said, yeah, 100%. But I said, if there's any way at this demonstration that I can put my hand on him, if I can touch his shoulder, if I can just touch him for a second, I'll get all the psychic information I need as to whether he's legitimate or not. So we go to the demonstration and we're sitting there and I said, I got to go to the restroom before it started. So I get up to excuse myself, go to the restroom. Who's coming out of the restroom but Uri? And we looked at each other, nodded and smiled, and I reached over and patted him on the shoulder as he went by, got all the psychic information I needed. I said, yeah, this guy's the real deal. So we went through the demonstration, and the critics always say that Uri violently manipulates the spoons when he bends them and all this type of thing. Well, he piled out this bag of spoons on the table and had everybody whack them, make sure they were solid, and try and bend them like this, and they were all solid and real spoons. And he let somebody come up and pick one at random, and he said, okay. And he gets a spoon and he starts bending it, and the bowl of it starts going down, and he's holding it by the tip end, by the tip end of the handle. And he's stroking it so lightly that it doesn't even wobble, even though he's only holding it like that by the tip end. And as it starts to bend, he raises his finger up off the spoon and just strokes the air over the spoon, and the spoon continues to bend down dramatically, violently. And what was really funny was after he finished, there was a bunch of people in the audience that jumped up and started, look, Uri, look. And they had forks and knives and spoons that they had been at home in these demonstrations and done were showing him. So we get through the lecture, get through the demonstration, and he was signing books. So I had a copy of the book that I bought that I wanted him to sign. And so we were standing in line to get the book signed. And we get up there and we smile at each other. He's like, oh, the guy from the restroom. Yeah, we smile. And he starts to sign my book, and he looks up at me and he goes, we know each other. And I kind of laugh and smile. And I said, yeah. And he says, we've never met in person. This is the first time we met in person, but we know each other. And I said, yes, we do. Didn't say anything else. And he said, we've emailed. I said, yeah. And he said, and we've written letters. I said, yes. He said, we've discussed very specific things in these emails and letters. And I said, yeah. And he mentioned a few of the things, and then I told him who I was. And he was like, oh, okay. And everybody standing around was just gobsmacked. They were like, holy cow. And like I say, there was no way that Uri could have known it was me, no possible way, no possible clue. So absolutely, from his demonstration and from that, I can tell you he's legitimate. And, our government says he's legitimate. They say that he does what he says he can do.
Yeah.
So so Uri is absolutely the real deal.
Right.
The Randy, the amazing Randy, the magician who's dead now. It was his life's work to destroy Uri. And what was so hilarious about Randy had this thing. I saw one of the specials that Randy did one time on TV. This documentary he had done about the psychics, because he had the $1 million challenge. And now this is Randy's admission. Randy had this psychic that said he could tell something from any object that Randy chose to give him. So Randy said, okay, I got this thing that was a gift of mine, a gift to me from a friend of mine, and it came from a place nobody knows where this is. Nobody knows about this friend. It's not public knowledge. This guy can't possibly know anything about this. So he gives the psychic the object, and the psychic starts telling him where it's from, that it's from his friend, and where it came from, and what it is, and blah, 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 and things attached to the friend with it. Now, Randy on this special says the guy's batting 1,000. I'm like, wow, okay, where's the $1 million check, Randy? So they go on, and the guy says, there's something about your friend, something around his neck. He said, it's like, it reminds me of a clerical collar. He didn't say it was a clerical collar. He said, it reminds me of like a clerical collar. He said, but there's something unusual. There's a collar or something up around his neck. He said, it's an unusual way of dressing. So Randy said, because he said it was like a clerical collar, Randy said, nope, it's not a clerical collar. You're wrong. So therefore, everything that you said that was correct up to now is also wrong. If one thing's wrong, everything's wrong.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that the guy saw, Randy's friend had this propensity for wearing turtleneck sweaters. So there was indeed like this collar, this thing up around his neck. And the psychic was saying that. He didn't say it was a clerical collar. He said, it reminds me of like a clerical collar. There's something around the neck here. Well, the guy wore turtlenecks. So when I was on this one radio station in New York, the guy called me and he said, hey, John, guess who's going to be my guest? And I said, who? And he said, Randy. And I said, oh my God. And I was busy and I couldn't call in and I couldn't listen to the show. And he said, okay, what do you want me to ask him? And I said, well, ask him about that incident with the psychic, and then ask him my question that I always ask everybody. If, the big if, you're going to be 100% honest with me, you've had at least one experience in your life you can't explain by normal means. So I said, ask him those two things. So he reports back to me after he had Randy on the TV or on the radio, rather, and interviewed him. And he asked Randy about the psychic and about that. And Randy said, well, that's what I make everybody agree to. And we go in, and that's my thing. If one thing's wrong, it's all wrong. So unless you bat 100% with Randy, which nobody on the planet's ever going to do, then it's all bogus in Randy's eyes, which is totally unfair. So he wasn't a true, honest skeptic. He was just I'm going to debunk this from the get-go. And even if it's right, then you're still going to trip up, and I'm going to debunk it, and you're going to be wrong. So that was Randy's thing. And I said, well, what did he say when you asked him about if you're being totally honest? Haven't you had at least? And he said Randy's response was, no, next question. So that's what Uri dealt with all those years. And like I say, I've met Uri. He's the real deal. And he's a really nice guy. And we've kept in contact a little bit over the years. He's given me an endorsement for both my books, bless his heart, which is very nice of him. And we still keep in contact a little bit from time to time.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've often heard that Randy's challenge was impossible to meet. The criteria that he had was impossible to meet.
Yeah. And the frustrating thing about it is going into it, which Stanford Research Institute, Uri Geller, T.A.R.O.T, Puthoff, all these guys will acknowledge is that, and myself, the other side plays peekaboo with us. We don't get this reliable every time type of thing that we would like to when it comes to paranormal phenomena, psychic phenomena. It just doesn't occur on that regular basis. We wish that it did, for God's sake, but it doesn't. And that's one of the things that the so-called skeptics going into this will not allow for. And, and I think their big thing is, well, especially if they're a magician, they can say, well, you can do this. Well, I can do that. I can fake that. Well, just because you can fake something doesn't mean that the real doesn't exist.
That's right.
I'm interested, I was very much interested in how Puthoff and Russell Targ and their Project Stargate over there, and Ingo Swann. And Ingo Swann, he was quite a gifted psychic himself.
Very.
And he's the one that came up with those protocols for the remote viewing program the DIA tasked him to do, so that they could have some way of measuring or a reliable method. Yeah. So they said that anybody could learn to do this. Yeah. Do you agree that anybody could learn?
Yeah, we all have psychic ability to a degree, and some people are going to be a lot better than others. And, I always liken it to playing the piano. Some of us will study piano for 3 years and barely stumble through chopsticks. And somebody else will have this marvelous gift and hone it and study the craft and make us weep for the majesty of the music they play on stage. So we're all like that with a psychic gift. We all have a degree. We all have a plateau we're going to reach. We all have things we can do and cannot do. But yeah, everybody has it to a degree.
Right. I was watching, I don't know if you're familiar with IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, of which Dean is the chief scientist. Yeah. I was watching one of their programs recently. They have programs online. You can join a Zoom meeting. And they said something in there I've heard now from a few different researchers, that there is a high correlation between having a stressful childhood and having some kind of psychic ability or some kind of ESP. What would you say about that? Is that resonating with you, or do you think that doesn't really apply to you?
I don't know. There are, excuse me, there are people that have had traumatic childhoods that correlate to their psychic gift. There are people that have had wonderful, stable, smooth childhoods that developed a psychic gift. And I don't know, there may be, I've never studied it myself, but there may be a little bit of a correlation there between people that had distressed or disturbed childhoods that later developed a psychic gift. I know that there seems to be a very strong connection between ill health and psychic gifts. It seems like most people that have a genuine psychic gift have some type of weird health problems. Like myself, I've had bizarre multiple health issues since I was a kid, and they've
Okay.
continued into adulthood.
That's stressful. See, that's
Yeah.
stress. Doesn't necessarily
And
child
the
abuse.
interesting thing is, I guess it's the concept of the wounded healer. But the weird thing is, I've been able to successfully perform physical healing on other people and can't do a darn thing for myself. So it's been a very strange ride in that regard as far as physical healing goes.
That must be frustrating.
It is
So,
very
so you did
frustrating.
have, you see, because the theory is that if you're oppressed in some way or stressed out in some way, you turn in, and then you're going to be noticing the subtle world that other people wouldn't be because they're totally engaged.
Right, right.
That's, I think,
That's a good theory, and it makes sense.
yeah.
And I know for me, I can't say that it was such a subtle thing when I was young, because it did occur on the physical realm.
Right.
And it was more of a noticing that and kind of going after it, kind of chasing after it, rather than a turning inward for me. So,
Exactly. It seems, yeah, it's quite profound. Your
Yeah. It really
remarkable.
was. Going back to Stanford and all of those guys, there's a friend of mine, I won't mention his name, he's a scientist, and he was at Stanford when they started Stanford Research Institute, and he knew Puthoff and Targ and Keller and Swan and all these guys. And he said the government threw outrageous amounts of money at those programs because they worked. And one of the really interesting stories that he told me, he said there was a remote viewing session, and it involved this guy sitting on a bench by these train tracks, railroad tracks. And he said the remote viewer got the guy, got the bench, got the tracks, and some other things surrounding things around there. And so the government agent said, well, it's a success. We got everything we need. He saw the guy. And my friend said, where's the train? And he said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he's sitting by these tracks. The train's got to come by ever so often. Where's the train? And the guy's like, oh, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he said, well, think about this. He said, your remote viewer is an old film camera with slow speed film set on a slow shutter speed. So they get the stationary bench, and they get the stationary subject, and they get the stationary surroundings. But if the train comes by, just like with a real film camera, and I understood this because I'm a professional photographer, and I immediately got it. It just blew my hair back. I was like, holy cow. He said, just like with a real camera, if you're sitting there with a slow shutter speed, slow film, that train comes by, it's going to disappear when you take the shot. It's not going to be visible in the shot. That's one of the first things you learn as a student photographer is they give you the assignment on a New York City street. If you want to take a picture of the building and don't want any people in that, how are you going to do it? Well, you use a slow shutter speed, and everybody walking through the frame is just invisible. They just disappear. So he told the guy, he said, what if there were a way to make your remote viewer into a high-speed camera with high-speed film on a fast shutter setting, and then when that train comes through, he would see the train? And the guy was like, well, we got everything we wanted. He's like, yeah, but what if you could enhance that? What if you could increase that and get even more detail and more accuracy and everything else? The guy's like, and just kind of blew it off. So I think that's one of the problems that we have in paranormal investigation, psychic investigation. We get hidebound in what we're after, and then we're reluctant to say, hey, it could be better. It's like after all these years of doing this, I'm still constantly looking for ways to improve my accuracy, to get better, to increase my contact with the other side, and to make it a practical thing for people, something helpful for people. And so you never stop learning, you never master anything, you never perfect anything. It's always ongoing.
That's interesting. I wanted to ask you kind of an out of the blue question. What do you think
Sure.
of the chronic voice phenomenon?
Oh, I love EVP. I've gotten a lot of successful EVP. The thing that boggles my mind and boggles a lot of other people's minds is we cannot figure out the frequency that these voices are on. And I'll give you an example of that. I was on a podcast, interviewed on a podcast where one of the hosts was a professional musician. And we were discussing EVP and discussing the fact that we can't figure out those frequencies. And he said, John, he said, I can take any sound, any noise, any piece of music, anything audio that you want to give me, and I can manipulate it inside, outside, upside down with all of the software that I've got. I can do anything with sound. But he said, I put these EVP in there and I can hear them. I can hear the voices, but I cannot find the frequency that those voices are on. And we discussed the fact that once that breakthrough is made, we'll have real-time conversations with the other side once we can discern that frequency. We know they need noise, and the frequency of that noise can vary. It can be ambient sound. It can be sound from the recorder itself. It can be using a ghost box. It can be a detuned FM station, static. It can be water. It can be a number of things, but we still don't know what frequency that they're using to utilize that noise to talk to us and to play back and hear
They
that.
use ambient sound to produce the sound. That's what they're doing to manipulate. Is that what they're doing?
Sometimes I use ambient noise. Sometimes I use, like when you use a ghost box, that's a deliberate noise.
Yeah.
It's not ambient sound. It's
Yeah.
not background sound that's in the room.
I'm just talking about when you use a recorder, but yeah, I'm familiar with the ghost box idea,
Yeah,
which is a radio station thing, right?
right. Yeah. It scans multiple radio stations, and you can set the scan rate fast or slow and so on and so forth, have it going forward, have it go in reverse, whatever. And you don't have to use it. Like I've gotten some really clear EVP out in the forest, just holding the recorder up and getting crystal clear voices you could hear without even having to have headphones or anything.
Out in the forest?
I'm sorry?
In the forest you've got?
In the forest, yeah, in the forest.
Wow.
Yeah, if you go on writingwithghosts.net, which is the website for my first book, scroll down to the bottom of that page, there's an EVP that I got in the forest there. And it's clear as a bell. It says peekaboo. And I had the recorder on. I said, is there anybody out here? And you get this peekaboo, and it's clear as a bell. It's like, okay, we want you to know we're watching you. Peekaboo, we see you. Yeah, we're here.
Not too ominous. So riding, is that with motorcycles? Did I hear something about you and motorcycles?
Yeah, I've been a biker since I was about 15, and one of these serious, dedicated old school bikers. Like on my current bike, I have almost 114,000 miles on it, which is a lot of riding on a motorcycle, if you ask anybody. And the first book was born out of the paranormal experiences I had while riding my motorcycle. And so that was Riding with Ghost Angels and the Spirits of the Dead. That's my first book. And then my second book, A Knock in the Attic, that's the one I write about in detail about the History Channel TV pilot and that investigation, a lot of other things. And it's really more chronological. It goes back to my psychic awakening as a kid, and then coming up through my young years, my teenage years into adulthood, and on up to where I am now, and explains what I learned and what I went through, and all the phenomenal paranormal experiences I had. Well, not all of them, the highlights, because I've had over 1,000, like I say, but it gives the highlights of all those things. And then I've got a third book coming out I'm working on now, which everybody's really clamoring for. I'm trying to get it finished, but I'm booked into October with clients. And in the past year and a half, I've been interviewed over 100 times. It's like, I got to carve out time for this. But the book is 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities. And each chapter will take one specific psychic technique, define it, tell you what it is, tell you how to learn it, how to practice it and get good at it, and then the real world application of that. And it doesn't matter if you know it or not, or have any whatever. I'll take you step by step, take you by the hand, lead you through it, teach it to you, and where you can practice it to whatever degree that you're able to practice it. But all these things can be learned and used by everybody. So that'll come out hopefully this year, if I can finish it up.
So where can people get your books, John?
They're available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million online. There's a lot of small mom and pop bookstores around the nation that carry them online. I've made links available to those on each book's website, which is writingwithghosts.net or knockintheattic.net. If you want to get a reading with me, find out more about me, you go to johnrussell.net. And where my picture is up there at the top on either side, there's a picture of the book's cover. You can click on that. It'll take you to Amazon. You can buy it there.
Well, we've kept John captive here for about an hour and 10 minutes, and I'm
Oh, I've
wondering
enjoyed
if
it.
we ought to let him go at some point in time. Angie, do you have anything else you wanted to pursue with John before we?
I'm looking forward to your new book, so I'm going to keep my
Yeah.
eye. When is it going to be? Did you think that it's going to be completed?
I hope within the next 3 months, if I can. I hope I'll get it. Then we have to go through the publication process, and that's another month or two. So maybe more toward the fall, toward the end of the year. But I'm hoping to definitely get it out this year.
Terrific.
Yeah, cool. So I had one last thing, and then I will let you. I'm sure your wife is wondering where the hell you are. Like,
Oh, she's used to this. I'm on
she's used to it.
podcasts some nights for 2 or 3 hours. So
Oh my
she
gosh.
goes to bed with the dog, and I'm in here in my office, and she's used to it.
So it's familiar territory. I was kind of interested in your medical intuitive skills. So give us kind of an overview of how that works. Do you work with physicians? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yes, so far I haven't worked with physicians. And in giving readings, clients will ask about health issues, and you have to give the standard disclaimer, not a physician, can't prescribe, this is not medicine, blah, blah, blah. But over the years, I have been able to intuit things for clients medically that prove to be accurate, that prove to be helpful, and that help them out with health situations. And then again, like I say, I've been able to transmit physical healing to people. One of the most dramatic examples, well, I'll give you two really. This one, there was a period of time back in Texas where I grew up, and I was taking the city bus. And this guy had broken his back or something, had back surgery. I don't know what, but he had back surgery. And he was in a body brace and walked on a cane, and obviously in a lot of pain, and didn't get around worth a hoot. Well, he would get on the bus, and we kind of struck up a friendship, and we'd talk a little bit, and the bus would get going. He'd turn back around, and I'd be seated behind him, and I'd take my hands and put them up behind his seat and transmit healing energy through my hands, through his seat into his back. Well, every time that I saw him on the bus, I would do that and do it just as long as until one of us had to get off. And so a week later, he shows up to the bus. He doesn't have his body brace. He's still got his cane, but he doesn't have his body brace. He's a lot sprier. He hops up on the bus, and the bus driver's like, "Holy cow, man, what happened to you?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "My doctor said he's never seen anybody heal this fast and recover this fast from back surgery. I don't know what's happened, but I sure am happy." So that was one of the instances. And then the other thing, which I really, really love this story, this drinking buddy of mine and I used to go to this certain bar, and we knew all the people there, all the bartenders and all the staff management and everything. And we were sitting there at the bar, and most of them were college kids. And this girl come running up, one of the waitresses there that we knew, and she kind of flopped down on the bar beside us, and she said, "My God, would you look at my lip?" And she had this finger blister, this cold sore that had just started, and it was like a goiter. It was like huge and red and inflamed. Now, if you've got something that big or that bad, even if you take medicine for it, it takes days or sometimes even weeks before it completely goes away, before it goes down. And she said, "My God, I'm a monster." And we were kind of laughing and everything. And I said, "Hey," I said, do you mind if I do something?" She goes, "What? What are you talking about?" I said, "Let me zap some energy into that." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, So right here at the bar, in front of God and everybody, I get this energy flowing. I put my finger up right by her lip, by the blister, and I start transmitting energy into it. And she says, "That tingles." And then she said, "It's like getting hot. It's like it tingles and it's getting hot." And she said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "Oh, it's an old Indian trick." And I just left it at that. And she said, "Okay, whatever." So the next day, we're there again. She comes running in, runs up to us at the bar and goes, "My God, look at my lip." It was totally, completely, 100% healed. There was no evidence that she had never had any kind of a fever, blister, cold sore, anything there. No redness, no mark, nothing. Her lips were just totally 100% completely normal. So, you know, the point of all these things is this energy is there. It can be developed. It can be used for these practical purposes and to help people. And that's what we need to be exploring and looking at, and, you know, finding even better ways to make this real and practical in the everyday world.
Amazing.
Yeah, that sounds like something, a goal worth pursuing. Well, John, I'd like to
Absolutely.
thank you for being on here with us. It's been a real enjoyable conversation. I want to thank Angie for being part of it too. I think she has a future in doing anomaly shows if she wants to do them.
Yeah, me
But,
too. She's a
yeah.
great co-host.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on with us. And we'll, like I said, we'll give Dave, our other partner, some time to edit this. And we won't really, we usually just put some bumper music in. And if
There
you
you
want to
go.
send us promotional materials, Dave can include that on our YouTube channel. But
Okay.
we thank you very much for being our guest.
Listen, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate it so much. And Angie, it's nice to meet you. Daniel, I've known a while, but it's really great to be here. I appreciate you having me. I had a lot of fun. Hope you guys did. And we'll do it again down the road, maybe.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah, we like
right.
to hear people say that. Anyway, so take care there in Florida.
Okay, we'll do. You guys take care. Good
All
night.
right. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye-bye.